United States Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is in Ivory Coast today as part of a four-nation West African tour promoting good governance and economic development. She was in Liberia on Monday, where she attended the inauguration of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Earlier today, she held talks with President Alassane Ouattara about the challenges that lie ahead in the country. Secretary Clinton met with Mr. Ouattara at the presidential palace in Abidjan. The country's newspapers reflect the different positions among citizens of Secretary Clinton's visit to Ivory Coast since its disputed elections and violent conflict last year. Clinton's visit, the first by a U.S. Secretary of State since 1986, has generated much discussion in the country, with many recalling the U.S. giving its support to President Alassane Ouattara, who she met with Tuesday, over former President Laurent Gbagbo. Ouattara's ruling coalition won a landslide victory in December's parliamentary elections.
We know
that the Americans supported President Ouattara during the crisis that Ivory Coast has gone through. It's normal that after this crisis, the American Secretary of State comes to our country to see how life is going and if President Ouattara is following the democratic path.
Ivory Coast is one of 4 stops Clinton is making in West Africa during her 2-day trip to the region. Officials say the trip is aimed at underscoring the U.S.'s commitment to strengthening democratic institutions and economic development. Some Ivorians are counting on the trip to help boost investment in the country, particularly following the election crisis, which claimed an estimated 3,000 lives.
This will bring a lot to Ivory Coast because at least it will encourage investors. Anyway, people who are still worried, this will encourage them to come to Ivory Coast to invest massively.
The political strife ended with Laurent Gbagbo being forcibly removed from office. Now he's currently on trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague for war crimes during that time. The turmoil halted production of the country's top export crop, cocoa. Ivory Coast is the world's top cocoa producer. The U.S., which has an embassy in the country, has various economic interests in the cocoa sector and other areas. The agricultural processor Archer Daniels Midland, based in Decatur, Illinois, has a branch in Ivory Coast, while Cargill, another U.S. agribusiness giant, also has operations in the country.
All we can expect from this visit is that Americans come to say to Ivory Coast that they will invest in several sectors: mining, oil and agriculture. Anyway, everything is being reviewed at the moment. You know that the post-electoral crisis affected all sectors, particularly the private sector.
Now, Secretary Clinton is traveling to Togo next. She'll be the first U.S. Secretary of State to visit that country, and then Cape Verde before returning here to the United States. Well, joining us now in the studio to discuss Secretary Clinton's trip to Ivory Coast and the other countries is analyst Nyaka Lagoke. Nyaka, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I want to get, first of all, your general assessment and thoughts of Secretary Clinton's trip to Ivory Coast specifically and her objectives there to promote good governance and spur economic growth.
Yeah, I listened to a speech, and I think that she did not. I think she did not hear the suffering of the Ivorian people, and even though she pushed Mr. Ouattara to work more for dialogue. But when you take the leader of somebody who represents at least half of the population to The Hague, and that one minister died in Israel, and when he came, his body at the airport, the president of the National Commission was not even there. Mr. Ouattara did not have one representative there. Women are being raped, and people are being killed, extrajudicial killings. And when you come and congratulate such leader, so I think that it is not what people wanted to hear. But on the other side, we think that she might be pushing for Soro to go to The Hague, because this is what we heard, and we want to see how serious they are about that intention.
Now, on the same point that you just raised about some of the social tensions that are still happening in the country, one of the youth leaders, Charles Blegude, has actually been calling for some kind of dialogue between the opposition and the government, saying that there is social tensions. Is that still a reality right now, that it could escalate?
We cannot, Mr. Ouattara is disqualified to bring reconciliation and it's disqualified, to bring peace to Ivory Coast. I said that many times. And even the State Department issued in December a warning asking its citizens, or the American citizens, not to go to Ivory Coast because of the level of insecurity. And there are so many preconditions Mr. Ouattara is not taking into account, so I don't see how he can bring peace and reconciliation and real dialogue, because because I don't see that's not his intention.
That's not his intention, of course. And also, I don't know if maybe some would think that the conversation has moved beyond now his legitimacy to rule, because he's been here to the United States, he's been endorsed by the international community.
That's the West. That's the problem. That's the West. That's the West.
But then also we know that ECOWAS was behind his
Yes, ECOWAS, but I'm talking about the Ivorian people. I'm talking about the Ivorian people. And if you take the headlines of Ivorian newspapers on a regular basis, even when she was there, people were fighting Alassane Ouattara's mercenaries, and the population, they were in a fight in the eastern part of the country.
So now at this particular juncture then, what should the focus be? So you're saying pretty much that Secretary Clinton's trip is misguided, that it should have been focusing more on reconciliation? What exactly?
Because we have the impression that America and France and all those powers, they focus so much on Gbagbo that they don't see the reality in Ivory Coast. They don't feel the plight of the Ivorian people. That this is what I'm saying.
What are you advocating? What is it at this point you're saying that should be the focus? And that maybe
400 people have the assets frozen. 400 people. The leadership.
And are you saying that is part of the
of course.
economic
400 people, they have the asset frozen. The tens or dozens of people from Babo's side are in jail. The unions cannot organize. The opposition cannot rally in the country. That's the environment. When you see such environment, so how Mr. Ouattara can tell us that he's sincere about peace and reconciliation and justice in Ivory Coast?
Well, it seems like there's a lot to still resolve in Ivory Coast. But
Thank you
for raising some of those highlights.